What happens if he doesn't get a meeting with Trump?
Well, he gets a whole bunch of headlines saying he still can't get a meeting with Trump. Look, that's not the important part, right? In fact, it doesn't really matter if Anthony Albanese doesn't meet Trump for 3 years. The issue is, does AUKUS get dumped? That's the issue. Now, the thing is, I was all for he has to meet Trump, and I still believe he does. But we didn't have our tariffs altered, right? So the real question is around AUKUS, and that is the primary issue. So if he doesn't meet Trump, embarrassing headlines. If he doesn't, if the US then, whether he meets him or not, dumps AUKUS with this review on, well, that's a much bigger issue. That's a much greater moment. That means we've wasted 15 years not getting submarines when we're an island nation, which would be crazy. So my biggest fear for Australia is that AUKUS falls over, not really whether or not Anthony Albanese meets Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think we all hope that won't happen. The other big story today, of course, is the rate cut, now sitting at 3.6, 3 rate cuts in a row. I think if you listen to Michelle Bullock today on Sky, you would have heard her talking about maybe another one. Some people say there might be another 2. Jim Chalmers looks pretty happy with himself, but he goes into next week, which we'll cover in some detail next week, this round table where productivity's in the toilet, people's wages are going nowhere, there's redundancies all over the joint. The economic, the Treasurer doesn't have a great economic story to take to his round table.
Well, he's got low inflation, low unemployment. That's what you usually look for. The issue is economic growth and productivity. And that's the argument for more rate cuts, but also, tax cuts which can help business. That's what we need. I'm concerned about this reliance on either government-created jobs or government jobs, whether it be the NDIS or through government subsidies to childcare or even through Medicare or whatever. That's the corner the economy's turning, which is of the biggest concern. The low inflation at the moment, low unemployment, is a good story. Interest rates coming down is a good story. But the challenge ahead is to make sure that we don't become some sort of command economy, Steve. And I'm not sure the government has any answers to that.
No, probably not. I always like to end our little chats with a bit of cheekiness. So before you go, the PM today, he did his breakfast crosses to breakfast television from Melbourne, from outside the MCG. You and I don't know why, it was nothing to do with the MCG or the AFL, but he was there. You and I are both from AFL states. Why the hell would anybody in their right mind mention rugby league when they're outside the MCG? Have a look at this, where the Prime Minister is standing there talking about the Rabbitohs and the Brisbane Broncos.
Oh, look, there are people on both sides of this debate who want conflict to continue, who want to think that it's like a football game between, South and the Broncos, and you got to back in your team and you got to back them in. What we need is a win-win.
Why would you do that when you're at the MCG, the home of Aussie rules?
Well, I don't know. I know he did the MCG crosses the day of the election. And so maybe he liked doing them, so he did it. But look, in fairness to the PM, he actually does. There's been a bit of controversy about which AFL team he supports, but he is a follower of AFL as well. He's been to something like 15 or 20 grand finals, Steve. So nearly as many as you, Steve, with your, Richmond support. But in fact, you and I met up for a beer at one, I recall. But look, so he does get into the AFL, but yeah, he's absolutely obsessed with the Rabbitohs, and they've had a shocker of a year. But yeah, also, I mean, is he Hawks or is he Sydney Swans or is he something else? I still can't work it out. He claims to be Hawks, Anthony Albanese.
Greater Western Giants. Paul Keating once had a picture taken with wearing a Collingwood jumper.
I thought Keating was Collingwood.
So, oh, really? He wouldn't have a clue, mate. Andrew, thank you very much. See you soon.
Cheers.